So welcome to the People Performance Podcast, where we discuss all things people performance. The People Performance Podcast is made up of 3 series. First up, we have the Leader Lounge episodes with me, the founder. Then we have the guest interview episodes. And finally, we have the performance episodes delivered by the T2 consultants. If, after listening to our podcast, you want to get in touch with T2 about anything we do, please contact us at help@trans2performance.com. You can stream or listen to our podcast on all the usual platforms available. So for now, sit back, tune in, and enjoy the People Performance Podcast.
Coming up on this episode.
This is something that I would believe that every single person watching this, listening to this podcast, can relate to.
Maybe you're listening now and you're going, actually, all of those things scared me.
But when was the last time that you were open to other people challenging your perspective?
And when was the last time you had so much tenacity, determination and unwillingness to give up that actually when you've got to the end, that feeling of, achievement, if you like, has been enough to make you realise it was worth the effort and you would definitely do that again.
Hello and welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Bernice Castling.
And the Tracy Roberts.
So, Tracy, today we have got a hot topic. What is that topic?
We're going to talk about adaptability today.
Yes, we are. And when it comes to adaptability, we've been speaking to people quite a lot lately around thinking about your adaptability quotient. So if I use those words, what's it all about and what does it mean?
I guess if we're going to generalise it, it's like anything. It's how high in a stack rank are you for dealing with whatever that quotient may be. So in this case, it's how well do you thrive in a changing environment? That's the way I'd summarise it. And thrive's the key, isn't it? Because everyone's got an element of adaptability, but the higher up we are on the adaptability quotient, the more likely it is that we'll embrace things around us and actually sometimes seek adaptability opportunities.
Yeah.
When can I actually find something that takes me off in a different direction because it keeps me energised?
Definitely. And this is something that I would believe that every single person watching this, listening to this podcast can relate to, because it's been a topic for us. We work with people in all different backgrounds, sectors, industries, and the world that we live in today requires a high level of adaptability. And historically, we hear things around IQ, EQ, but we're big believers now that it's really almost critical, I would say, to take into consideration what your AQ looks like. So IQ, EQ is important, right?
Absolutely. Your EQ, we always talk about it as empathy and communication and how high your level is on that. And of course, we measure that here all the time for alongside our psychometric testing. I would say this is how you relate in situations.
Yes.
And your RQ is the logic and knowledge that you have on a certain subject or situation. So that's what you know. And then your AQ is essentially your ability to have resilience and sometimes step into or lead with change or in a situation. So that's how you adapt.
Yes.
So for some people, looking at those 3 things individually, they can go, okay, I've got really high EQ, as an example, don't have as much knowledge about this situation that I'm going into. But if my adaptability is high, there's ways and means of how I make sense of the situation, and it will allow me to either enter this situation with confidence or even a bit of trepidation if you're a little bit lower down in some of those AQ elements.
Yeah.
And I guess if you flip it around, if you've got less EQ, as an example, what might that mean in a situation that you're not taking in all the information around you, you're not necessarily sensing the changes in the people that you're working with. And again, people are kind of very conscious of that sometimes, aren't they? I probably need to be more curious because it's not natural to me, someone's signals.
Yes.
So for me, as a huge empath, I walk in a room and I feel everything. So I'll think, oh, this doesn't feel good. Or I've just watched that person's body language change when they've announced said change or the situation. Other people kind of don't see that naturally. So the only way they can step their EQ up is to ask a question and to sense check, etc. With IQ, it's the same. You can have a limited amount of knowledge, but you can go seek the knowledge. And this AQ element is actually how we pull it all together and how confident we are in some situations.
Yeah, definitely. I think when it comes to times where it's stressful, uncertain, you don't really know what's going to happen, or it's a case of it's fast-paced and it's forever changing and moving, AQ is what's really going to help propel you to navigate that situation. Your IQ, yes, can definitely help when it comes to knowledge on how to navigate the situation, but sometimes you can't even rely on your IQ.
No, absolutely not, because the information you've got is only relative to, I guess, your processing system. That's the way I see it, is your AQ. And I guess it's important to say with AQ, it's not a singular thing. We're going to talk about 5 components of AQ, because you can be quite high in some of these elements that will kind of take your average up a little. You can be a little bit lower down. But I guess the beauty of AQ is that you can, if you seek to understand it a little bit better, you can look for ways to build it or maintain it. So it's probably quite important actually the listeners get to know exactly what those 5 components look like, really.
Yes, definitely. So just to confirm, when it comes to AQ, the definition that we're exploring and looking at is your capacity to adjust to new conditions, learn from experiences, especially failures, because
we need
that's
to come back
really
to that.
important,
Yeah.
and thrive in ambiguous or uncertain environments. So Tracy, you just mentioned that there's 5 key components that we need to consider.
Yeah.
Let's jump in with the first one.
So the first one is a bit of a mouthful, actually. Cognitive flexibility, which sounds a bit scary. But this is your ability to think creatively and consider various viewpoints. It involves being open to new ideas, approaches and perspectives, and being able to shift your thinking when needed.
Yeah.
So I guess part of that might fall into traditional discussions around that fixed and growth mindset.
Yeah.
In the terms of, someone who's got quite a fixed mindset would prefer to focus on, individual circumstances and go with what they know, as an example. Someone who's got large amounts of cognitive flexibility, there's a little bit more going on there in terms of being able to maybe discern a bit more about where they kind of put their attention, and sometimes get energy. I think that's another thing to add. They actually get energy from applying cognitive flexibility. So I think some people exist like that. They're kind of walking around, they're open-minded, they're thinking of new ways of thinking. But other people actually would rather stick in that place of safety, if that makes sense. So obviously it's an important thing to consider, but I guess how would people know if they've got cognitive flexibility? That would be a good question, wouldn't it?
I think when I was thinking about planning, we were structuring this podcast, an example that came to mind was an example, something that's just happened for us at T2. So simple, but I think many could relate to it. Let's say you're driving to work and you go do this route every single day, twice. Driving to work, and then all of a sudden, the one critical road that you need to go down in order to get to work, it's closed. Ginormous big red sign, road closed. And you're thinking, right, okay, it's rush hour traffic. What do I do? Someone with high levels of cognitive flexibility has the ability to almost pause in the moment, have that kind of curiosity, exploring all of the potential options, because we're using a lot of our mental acuity attributes here. And it's then being able to generate those alternative options and then be able to select the best one in order to navigate that. And you're doing that as kind of all of the cars are around you and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I need to quickly do a U-turn because that lorry's in the way.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make, that's a really good example, because we're talking about Scott Morrison the other day, aren't we? We are 100%. Scott, you know what we're talking about. But I think it's a really good example that there's a little bit of a differentiation there between sometimes it's processing speed and doing it very quickly and in the moment. And sometimes actually it's not necessarily about speed. It's about the ideas you create in your head, because we've kind of started to work on what if you knew that you were quite high in certain attributes, because that's a language we use here at T2. We would say open-mindedness, creativity, innovation or innovativeness, task switching, curiosity, humor is and that actually that will bring that back to Scott in a moment, and cunning. But if you think about it, open-mindedness is that ability to take things in and just be aware,
and especially viewpoints of others as well.
And the curiosity is actually trying to capture things, like find things out, and I guess hunt information, if that makes sense.
Seeking it out.
So you might be quite high in open-mindedness, like taking all information. So in that moment, is someone turning round? Is that person turning left? Is it? And but you're not able to transfer that skill quickly back to an idea in your head. Whereas with curiosity, you're opening the window, you're asking for what's going on, you're taking advice. So it shows up in different ways, doesn't it?
Yes.
But I think it's about that ability to I mean, I think discernment probably sits in there as well, doesn't it? So you're, with all the information going on, information overload, what have you chosen and how quickly can you do that?
Yes. So I know for me, based on my attributes, a lot of my high scoring attributes sit under or tie into cognitive flexibility. I've got high levels of curiosity, high levels of open-mindedness, creativity. Cunning is also quite high for me. But then what's quite interesting, so I've got the ability to scan, look at all the options. When it comes to actually making a decision on the right one, that for me is where I might struggle.
Yeah, so I think discernment, I guess it's the difference between decision making and discernment. Decision making is going on you got really quickly and saying, I'm just going to make this decision. The discernment, if people are better at discernment before making a decision, 9 times out of 10, they make a better decision, don't they?
Yeah, that's it.
So it's a key thing to think about. So maybe that's for the viewers and the listeners to think about is, do any of those things come quite naturally to you? Is there anything on there that you do? Maybe like you can maybe take information in, but at times sometimes landing on the right thing. Maybe that's your marginal gain in that cognitive flexibility section. Maybe you're listening now and you're going, actually, all of those things scare me. I like certainty. If the road is closed, I might go home.
Yes.
Rather than try and make a decision, I'll actually go home.
I'm pulling over and I'm just going to kind of sit and feel sorry for
the last one there that we put in there was humour, and that's why we're using this example, because what did we get from Scott in that moment? The group got a voice message to warn other people, which was great.
It was.
But B, it was him kind of talking us through in his head, his actions, and there was a lot of humour.
But as
in
if
that.
he was like a newsreader.
Absolutely.
At the same time. Yeah. And I think humour helps just adaptability throughout all 5 components. Yeah. But I think with cognitive flexibility, have a moment to pause and consider, when was the last time that you challenged your way of thinking, you challenged your perspective when it came to problem solving or faced with a uncertain, stressful situation. But when was the last time that you were open to other people challenging your perspective? That's typically will help you identify what your cognitive flexibility looks like.
The last bit there is the mistake. So I know we're going to go back to how mistakes are helpful, but cognitive flexibility, the reason that people maybe aren't as strong as that is because they're trying to avoid failure. So they might not take a new idea, or they might not take on too much. So as an example, if you prefer to compartmentalize and focus on one thing at a time and you're forced into doing task switching, that feels like you're not able to give everything 100%. If you're too cunning or too creative, is that going to be too far out? Is that going to go wrong? So back to your point, how many times in the last short period of time have you sort of gone in on that a little and challenged that? And if you've gone with an idea you thought might be a little bit avant-garde, but you're going to go with it, because that can be a way to build cognitive flexibility. Because then if things do fail, it's learning to bounce back from that too, which is covered in some of the other elements too.
Yeah, because that ties us nicely into the second component, which is emotional resilience. So what's that about?
Well, the definition we're going with here is the capacity to maintain emotional stability when facing change and setbacks. And I guess we always talk about resilience being seen as this, the ability to just take things, almost like hit me again.
Go.
Yeah,
keep going.
But we actually know it's about bouncing back to your baseline state. So for us, the emotional resilience piece is linked with a couple of kind of big attributes and orientations for us. So resilience obviously is the biggest thing, general resilience. Perseverance and persistence, they kind of sit in there. Tenacity is a big one because it's a determination and an unwillingness to give up, which is going to give you that emotional strength side of it. But the ones that I like to kind of allude to in here is having optimism.
Definitely.
Patience, which is a big one, because
and a lot of people are low on patience.
Oh, well, I'm very low on patience. In fact, I think it's my second lowest. But why it's kind of linked to emotional resilience is sometimes it's actually testing your patience that builds the emotional resilience, if that makes sense.
And we have to take into consideration as well that as human beings, we are emotive. So when those situations happen and things change very quickly, it's natural for us to feel a certain way. It very much is a case of, well, how long does that stay for? So if you're at work and you've been working on a massive big project for months, you've put so much dedicated work into this project, all of a sudden, bam, it's cancelled. Naturally, you're going to feel frustrated by that or even disappointed. But if you've got a high level of emotional resilience, it's about moving on from that and getting back to that baseline state, isn't
Accepting it, responding to it and understanding it. But I guess the other thing that I was recognizing here was the last one was humility. So in that moment, the things that you're confident with. But the thing about humility is you know what you're good at, you know what you're not good at. So in that moment when you're struggling for information, support, whatever it might be, it's being able to tune into what you need to get back to baseline or to move on from that said thing that you've been struggling with. So emotional resilience, it's not as easy to kind of say I'm very extremely high either way. It does tie in a little bit to the EQ element of kind of that Venn diagram that we're talking about, but it's more about, as you said, how you're dealing with your emotional state in the moment. So maybe the kind of questions people can ask there is, the last time my patience was tested in a situation where I was uncertain, how did I respond?
Yeah.
Did I feel that in the long term I could understand the benefits of applying pause in that situation and holding my thoughts back or my emotions back? How long did it take me to, in the last instance, bounce back from a setback?
Yeah.
Or am I still feeling a lagging feeling of that as a consequence? And then the tenacity one's probably one that I like to go, it's almost the opposite of patience to a degree, isn't it? It's like I've been able to sit in that and be patient. And then when was the last time you had so much tenacity, determination and unwillingness to give up that actually when you've got to the end, that feeling of, I don't know, achievement, if you like, has been enough to make you realise it was worth the effort and you would definitely do that again. Because there are some projects you're in where you go, why am I doing this? I mean, I can think of one situation from this week, actually. So my uni work, yes, that I spent 7 weeks on.
Yes.
And there was a mistake.
Yes.
And as a consequence, my patience was tested in the last 2 days.
It was.
And then I hit a situation where I was told I have to redo it again because there's been a mistake in the information that was supplied to me. My perseverance, persistence and tenacity got me to the end of that project despite it being difficult. My patience made me wait and kind of apply the pauses to get it through. And then in that moment when I was told all that work you just done, you gotta get rid of that now.
Naturally, you're gonna feel frustrated. Yeah.
And I actually recognise now that I went through a very quick process compared to what I normally would have done. I think I would have gone off my baseline and been in a very dark place for a couple of days. It would have affected my work, etc. I used my humility, leaned into one or two of you guys to give me a bit of a pep talk about it, and walked out the room at the other side and thought, it is what it is.
That's it.
And I was able to then move on and in the moment, that definitely taught me that I'm getting better at harnessing this emotional resilience.
And that's the beauty of having that awareness of what your attribute stack rank looks like, because that's where you can, take into consideration how you use it to help you, and make considerations when it comes to some attributes that do sit a little bit lower, such as patience.
And I could definitely reflect now on situations previously where I would have definitely been off my baseline far longer. So I recognise now that I've done the work in that area.
Yes.
And I feel the benefits from it.
So we've taken a moment to explore cognitive flexibility. We've just looked at emotional resilience. The third key component to embracing your adaptability quotient is
unlearning and relearning. So the willingness to let go of outdated knowledge and acquire new skills. So I think we talk about learnability when we're relating to attributes that we use. And learnability, I think, comes across as that, I can learn things really quickly, I can pick things up. And actually what we say is it's not about that. It's about taking a situation at the time, learning very quickly, but then being able to apply it to a future state or an experience, or help someone else understand it. Does that make sense? If you can be quite high in curiosity and all those things and take information in, but it's the learnability element is about how you can apply it to what you're about to do. So if you've got really high levels of learnability and adaptability as an example, you are very quickly, your processing speed is so quick. So the unlearning and relearning element is how easily can you let go of, I don't know, a situation, a process, and move on to another one. And then there's an element of, even in there, how can I find something better in this situation? Because curiosity, open-mindedness, humility and adaptability are in there. So it's not about, okay, I've just been told this has changed, hard stop, I need to find something else.
Yeah.
You can be good at that, but it's about in the moment, hang on a minute, this doesn't feel like it's working.
And can you let go?
Can I let go of this and find a new way? And do I have the humility to go, I don't actually understand this enough, or I am not the person to come up with a plan for this. I need to seek help. Or as an example, am I open to all the stuff going on around me? So maybe I've set a process at work and people around me are constantly giving me these little warnings of it not being right. So does someone come back to me several times in a month when I have a project due in and go, can I just check that this is the right way to do it? Or I've done X, Y, Z, it still doesn't feel right. Am I picking up on all those things and going, it's my way, so just get it done?
Yeah.
Or am I going, oh, 5, 6 people in here have now indicated to me that this process isn't as slick as I think it is. Therefore, I need to go, what should we change? Yes. Does that make sense? And I think that's about the difference between open-mindedness and curiosity. Again, open-mindedness, I can hear it going on, but I actually don't care. Curiosity, interesting.
I'm seeking it out.
I'm seeking it out, but also how do I let them see that I'm curious about what they say?
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
And that's why it's unlearning, relearning, not just learning, because you've got to be able to unpick it all, start again, or look at it in a different light. And for some people, that's tough.
And again, naturally, as human beings, we want to feel kind of safe. We like routines as well. We like to know what we're doing. So that ability to just be able to kind of let go of something, especially something that's so familiar, whether it be a system that you use, whether it be just a way of working, whether it be a process, can be really difficult for some of us. I was doing some work with some people who work quite senior in the NHS recently, and based on this gentleman's attributes, really recognised that out of all 5 components, this is the one that is the struggle. So very low curiosity, open-mindedness was lower middle, and decisiveness and things like that were really high as well. So they were able to recognize, oh my goodness, in certain situations, especially when stress happens or things need to adapt and change, which forever it does in the NHS, he found it really difficult. He makes an opinion in his mind and that's it. If someone then goes to kind of challenge that or that doesn't work, he finds it really difficult to just let go of what he believes to be right based on past experience, and then really struggles with the curiosity to actually take on, learn, and learnability was also really low. What was really nice though is based on the service that he supported, the 2 people that worked incredibly close to him, they were actually higher on some of these attributes. And they were able to take into consideration, you know what, yes, I'm really good at making decisions, but when I just need to let go, that's when you step in. And that's what a really good team does.
And I was just about to say, there's sometimes a connection between curiosity and time.
Yeah.
So if you say to someone, why weren't you curious in that situation? Or even why weren't you open-minded? They'll go, well, I'm in an operation environment. I don't have time for that. And I would argue and say curiosity can take a second. It can be one quick question or one quick sense check. But it's applying that tiny pause, so a little bit more patience, to go, what can I learn in this situation? So even if you're being open-minded, hearing anything going on, you haven't got time to dig into it. I'm hearing things. Therefore, what can I learn in this situation? It's going to take me 2 seconds to ask a simple question. But I definitely think there's from what I've, experienced in terms of people working with their attributes, curiosity, sometimes it's not that they don't want to be curious. They just don't naturally do it because they're in an operational environment and they feel like, I know I'm a subject matter expert, so therefore let's move fast. But I'm here to challenge everyone here. Curiosity takes 5 seconds. That's all it takes.
It does. So, what's next?
Situational awareness. That's number 4. So the ability to effectively read and respond to the surrounding environment. Now, this is an interesting one because you can have high situational awareness, low curiosity. So you can know what's going on, but not care.
Yeah.
Or you can have situational awareness and low courage. So maybe notice things going on and not step in and say things. So the kind of things that we've kind of come up with here to kind of just test yourself to see where you think you are. So here's another one. You can have high situational awareness, low emotional intelligence. So you can maybe feel there's a situation change, but not necessarily connect with the emotive responses of people. And I guess in adaptability, it's a really important fundamental, isn't it, to be able to zone into people's energies.
That's it. It's not just about the specifics on what is happening, but it's what's the journey that people are experiencing as they go on that change.
So we then put caring, compassion, selflessness and generosity in there because as part part of that situational awareness is being able to tap into that quickly. So as an example, we always talk about, for empaths like me, I'll feel it, I'll reach in, I'll ask a curious question that gives me the emotion, or I'll watch the body language change, I'll go back on it later because I've picked up on it. For other people who are not as good at that, they need to get more curious so they can have the situational awareness, but maybe have to reflect for a moment to step back in with care or compassion instead.
Yeah, I know for me, based on my attributes, empathy is in my bottom 5. So I remember being absolutely mortified when I got my attributes report. Like, cunning's in my top 10 and I'm low on empathy. What a horrible human. However, my emotional awareness is actually much higher. My curiosity is my top number 1 attribute. And I like to think it's the curiosity that helps me. I might struggle to truly, because empathy is, I feel how you're feeling. So I might struggle to connect with that, but I can certainly see it.
Yeah.
Like, I've got the curiosity to explore it.
And that's a really great example of how you can then show care, compassion, generosity. Because what do you need in that situation? So let's go into a massive change being announced. You're the leader, you're in a space, situational awareness is high. And I've seen this happen. You can tell the leader clearly knows and has maybe even preempted some of the responses in the room, but they'll run out that door and not show any of these things we're showing. Don't have to be empathetic. It can be, I can show a level of care in the situation, compassion, and the other word there's generosity. Sometimes it's as simple as, I need to show generosity here by saying, this is a lot to take in. I'd like you all go take an hour.
Yeah.
And then what I'd like you to do is put your thoughts down and let me know how you feel this is going to affect you. It doesn't have to be as hypersensitive in the moment. It's about applying what that person needs at the time. Or the compassion element is, I cannot even begin to understand how you guys are feeling.
Yeah.
It's a big part of your life that's changing. However, I'd like to understand that. So what do you need from me to help you move to the next stage? And then I guess that word that you used was cunning. How can you look at things from a different angle? So cunning can be, I want to help sort this situation and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
So as a leader, it's like that little, I always joke about it being an algorithm appear above your head. Like, how do I sort this out? But actually, sometimes it is in this moment, it's thinking of a way around it with people as you sit there. Okay, well, how could we deal with this now? And again, that shows a level of care too, doesn't it? So the cunning's used in a different way. So I guess what we're asking here is, situational awareness can be high, but what are you doing with it? Because if you've got high situational awareness and people see you have it, but you don't apply any of the other things underneath, the chances are that's going to bring that score down a little, because you can be aware but do nothing with it.
Yes.
Or you can be aware and do everything with it.
Because what we're looking at here is the ability to read the room, take in all of the details, and then effectively be able to respond to that situation. So you might be able to read it, but if you've, as you said earlier, if you've got no courage to step into that despite the fear, then that's not going to serve you well, because you're not responding to it.
So you might be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I'm always aware of what's going on around me, but then ask yourself,
What do you do about
what
it?
do you plug in after it?
That's it.
Which brings us into the last one, which is 5, right?
Yes.
So this is growth mindset.
Mm.
Always an interesting conversation, because for us here at T2, we kind of see this as it's a spectrum. Yeah, it's not as clear as you're fixed or growth. And there's actually sometimes where fixed mindset's actually a good thing. If you're trying to knuckle down and get something done, that's almost compartmentalization, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what we're saying here is recognizing where you sit on the spectrum of growth and in key areas, and consciously developing your lower growth areas. So it's not about saying, oh, I'm always looking round, I'm a growth mindset person. You can test your spectrum of growth on T2 Hub. So if you are one of our partners, you can do that. There are different areas you're going to measure yourself in, and it's like an average of them all, if that makes sense. Because you do naturally get people who, if I ever said to anyone, are you a fixed mindset? They'd never say, oh yeah.
That's me.
That's me, definitely. Everyone thinks they're growth mindset. So let's talk about that. What kind of elements are we thinking about in a growth mindset, kind of, or on the spectrum of growth, if you like?
As in the different elements that we take into consideration, or just attributes?
I guess attributes, because then people can go do the test if they want to.
Yes. I think when it comes to attributes, the first thing that comes to my mind is humility. So do you have the pure awareness of your strengths and weaknesses? If you're high on that, then that's certainly going to help you. But then it's a case of, what are you doing about it?
Yeah.
I think so at times, even like confidence and self-efficacy can tie into it, because you've got to have that belief. I might have the awareness that I'm not very good at this one element and aspect of my job, but I might have a low belief that I'm going to be any good, ever going to be any good at it. So that's something that comes into play. I think learnability again, courage, because again, if it does feel a little bit scary to develop something or explore something that maybe you need to change, you're going to feel fearful of that, or maybe even anxious to step outside of the box. Or it might be that we know that based on the work that we do specifically around growth mindset, that one of the elements is around how open are you to being able to ask for help and support when you need it. So for some people, it's a case of, that's really difficult for me. So therefore, that's where a little bit of courage is needed, because I don't want to be seen as weak.
I like that link, and I think is fair to say to people that if you have a look at the spectrum of growth that we work with, what's interesting about that is you're right, if humility is really high up there, because to learn, if you think you're the smartest person in every room, there's definitely a problem. That is not growth mindset. So that's the first thing. Humility means you know who to go and ask.
Yes.
Courage and even conscientiousness and accountability mean that you go seek the help.
And you're going to put the work in.
Yeah, and then it's the feedback element. So if feedback sits in there, how good you are asking or soliciting feedback. Some people go, I can take feedback and I'm okay with it, but other people go, no, I go seek it, because for me that's growth. Obstacles is another one. How good are you at dealing with an obstacle? People say to me, oh, surely everyone tries to get over an obstacle. I go, absolutely not. Some people hit the first road bump and they go, oh, screw this, I'm off. But that doesn't work. That doesn't work. So I'll just go find someone else. And I like actually what you said about humility, because for some people, they'll accept that they're not good at something, but they'll just leave it to someone else.
Yeah.
And that's the difference with a growth mindset. It's, I understand I'm not good at that, but I care enough to try and do something about it.
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest thing. So for me, that's then all going to build your self-efficacy. So that level of belief that you can do something hard, even though you know that at the time, it doesn't make sense to you. And the growth mindset piece, or that, that kind of element of it. I think it'd be really wise for a lot of people to think about where they sit there, because there's definitely different elements that will let you know if your AQ's higher or lower. So yeah, definitely worth thinking about your spectrum of growth.
100%, yeah. And if you're feeling a little bit stuck on something that's happening, whether it be in personal or professional life as well, is what are you doing about it? Is it something that scares you? Do you have the courage to step into it? And what would happen? What impact would it give to you if you could change that and develop it?
Absolutely.
So we've taken some time to explore AQ. We compared it to IQ and EQ as well, and AQ is really around how you are going to actually adapt to that. We've looked at these 5 key components. So what would be your recommended takeaway to anyone listening to this podcast?
Well, I guess the takeaway is some actionable strategies, because for me, it's great to understand that. But again, it's curiosity and impact, isn't it? So how can we take that information and do something with it? So how can we cultivate your AQ, start to think about it? So the first thing's awareness, isn't it? That's the first thing. So taking that time, we've got tools that we can help you kind of unpick that a little bit more. But the things that we've kind of come up with here at T2 is about thinking about how you can embrace more discomfort, which sounds scary for the average person. Actively seek out situations that might actually force you to activate those 5 elements of your AQ. Small acts first, that's the thing we always say, and then get braver. Practice reflective learning. So think about, after success or failure, what went well, what could be improved, what did I learn? This fuels that kind of unlearning and relearning element. Yeah, so that's really important. Seek out diverse perspectives. So rather than listen and just be aware, actually go find things out. I was watching something on the television the other day about someone who was kind of going to meet radical groups with radical ideas, because they wanted to actually force themselves to seek why that group of people have such deep-rooted beliefs and things that they really did not agree with. And what I loved about that was this. It was, I can't always agree on everything, but I want to really understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful tool, particularly as a leader, isn't it?
So important, especially the amount of people that we speak to who really struggle when they're in a meeting, a decision needs to be made, and there's that kind of challenge and debate happening in the room. But it's that ability to pause, have the curiosity to explore, right, okay, well, what's going on from their perspective? They're clearly passionate about us making this decision around this. So how do I use my curiosity to challenge that?
And you know what? I'm just going to throw a real wild card in here. Use AI. Because if your brain isn't wired like that, you can type into AI, here's my situation, what am I missing?
Definitely.
And it will give you some tips.
Yeah.
Develop emotional regulation. So that's different. So you can have things like as far as breathing, which we've done some podcasts on before, and we're going to do some more on that. Journaling, and thinking about your emotional responses to change. So thinking about how you can develop that. It's not a skill that you can click your fingers and go, right, I'm so emotional and then now I'm back in the room. It's not like that, but you've got to be able to understand what that looks like for you.
And if you're similar to me, so I know that I'm high on adaptability as an attribute in itself, but my resilience is actually quite low.
So you've got this lag.
Yeah.
So you get on with it, probably similar to me actually, where you get on with it, but then we have this emotional lag. So if you recognise that, you can circuit break and try
That's it. Utilise my time as well.
Yeah.
Create those moments to pause.
The other thing it said that we wrote down was honing your observational skills. So actually looking for social cues, subtle changes, what's happening around you, and trying to focus on the things that are really important. So maybe you think you're not as emotionally aware, so you're not as high on EQ, so you're going to start to try and dial into body language a little bit more, or you're going to start to listen to the words people use, because that's another thing. Words and tone could be a big tell. So for me, I pick up on subtle changes in people's tone, their text, their email, because I'm a massive empath. That could be a problem. I can overthink that.
Yes.
It's almost like flipping, reversing that a little bit sometimes as well. If you're high, how can you, take yourself out of that emotional space sometimes to see past that? So thinking about what you can notice that's different. Set learning goals. So once you've seen the skills and the knowledge areas you want to develop, put something down as a commitment that you want to work on.
Nice.
It could be something really small, like I am going to notice people's body language this week, or I'm going to ask 3 people for advice this week.
Yeah.
Or I will ask for help and not sit crying in my office by myself.
Being stubborn.
Guilty
as charged.
Trying to cultivate a test and learn mentality. So we would call this failing well. So take small measured risks, learn from the outcomes and adjust. And the reason that's as good is because failure is just as important as success. In fact, it's even more important. The other thing about failure is we don't tend to sit in autopsy enough and go, what did I learn or what can I use? And I think getting good at that gives you a bit more confidence in the long term that even if it went really wrong, you still figured it out, and you've got to be able to do that. And then the last thing that we wrote down here was if you're a leader, a manager, parent, or some sort of role model to people, you've got to showcase your willingness to change.
Yes.
If you learn and you're showing your resilience and your adaptability, people around you start to, see that and will adapt themselves. If you're not showing high levels of these 5 things, the chances are if you're trying to lead a team through change or you're planning and all that, in fact, we're going to have a discussion about that later, I think.
Yeah.
How do you get it right? Because immediately I can think of situations early in my leadership career where my adaptability quotient was definitely a lot lower, where as soon as a message has been delivered to me, my internal brain goes, how the hell am I going to take that and make 50 people buy into it? Because even I don't believe in that. So how do you own your message? How do you make your brand link in with high EQ? And how do you, instead of saying to people, be more adaptable, how do you indicate subtly how you become more adaptable? Because sometimes it's more around what you do and that calmness in the moment than actually, giving people training and telling them to read books and giving them shining examples. Let them see it.
Yeah, and it's recognising that with all of this, it all very much connects and ties into your attributes. And there's many, many different attributes. And an attribute is something, it's innate. It's part of you. So this is why it can be really difficult to challenge. And this is why we wanted to do this podcast today, because every client that we meet with, they're going through something. Everything's changing. Even just yesterday, I was working with a group of people, very quick, sudden change, and it completely is changing and transforming the way in which they serve the people that they're based on what they do.
And it's not about being perfect, is it? And I think that's the thing we need to land. It's about being prepared.
Yes.
And that's understanding what you're not good at. So it's back into that kind of humility piece and the persistence and open to evolution.
Yeah.
I think that's the word that I would like to use, open. With that in mind, I think maybe it's time to think about your adaptability quotient. So for those listening and watching, we would definitely recommend putting some thought into those 5 elements. And if you want to learn more about it, you know where you can have a workshop designed just for you to help you or your team with that.
Definitely. Perfect. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Bernice.
And we'll be back soon for another People Performance podcast.
The People Performance Podcast, brought to you by T2.